Dude, we don't actually have a name for this podcast yet.
I know.
Nor do we have a structure, nor do we have a format.
Is it the AI and Gaming podcast? Is it the Carter Cast?
Yeah, I kind of like having it as its own thing.
Yeah,
So, like-
I don't think it should say Carter in the name.
No, it's like its own thing because we would also be talking about a whole bunch of other stuff other than Carter. So I
Yeah.
don't know really what to call it.
Yeah, maybe people can help us with this.
Yeah?
Or we just put it out on the Discord. Say, what should we call it?
Yeah?
I think it's
Good
nice
idea.
the names that do what they say on the tin for podcasts so that you can search
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and it just says, yeah.
I reckon a bunch of people right now are like searching for podcasts, just typing in AI or like
Yeah.
AI gaming and these types of
AI
things.
podcast, AI gaming
Yeah.
podcast.
I mean, I do that.
Yeah, I do that. And it yields terrible results.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So if
Yeah.
more people need like not creative names for their podcast.
Yeah. Do you know what? Recently, I've been trying to look at AI podcasts and I've been just Googling like AI on Spotify. And I'm getting like Goldman Sachs and like The
Oh.
Economist and stuff coming out with as like the first results, which I find really interesting. Even like those
Yes.
big, massive corporate enterprisey, education-y businesses and corporate banks and blah, blah, blah. They're like super fascinated by this stuff. It's like encapsulated the entire world.
Yeah, podcasts also seem to be like the go-to piece of content that's not a huge barrier of entry. You know, it's
Yeah.
not a huge budget that you need. Everybody understands it. It spans different generations. There's not one place you post them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So you have some topics to
I
go
have some
through.
topics today of just things that have been going on in the AI world, AI gaming world specifically.
Okay.
We're going to mix it up each week in terms of what we talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought these three topics were like a little bit mind blowing, and I didn't know any of them existed an hour ago. So,
Okay.
so
and I'm blind to
are
these
super
topics.
fresh.
I don't know what you're going to bring up.
You might
so-
have heard of some of these. So,
Okay.
the first one is that yesterday, Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak and a bunch of other people signed an open letter to delay AI development by
Yes, they
6
did.
months.
I saw this on my feed.
What are your thoughts on this?
So I really don't know what to think about it. Like, it's really hard because Elon like started OpenAI, right? And so I thought he would have had way more, and the whole mission was for AI safety. I would have thought he would have had way more control and like influence over OpenAI's direction, considering he gave like a 100 million quid, 200 million quid, whatever it was, to OpenAI, and they have become closed AI. And they have gone completely in the sort of for-profit, building a product kind of route with the Microsoft deal and everything that they've done. I thought he would have, like, I mean, a massive donor would have had a much bigger influence over what they did. So, I mean, I get why he signed the letter, but I really thought he would have, like, more of an influence to actually make change than sign the letter. You know? I don't know. What do you think?
I think that the rate of AI is starting to increase in AI development. Significant AI leaps seem to be happening more frequently. And so that is scary for anyone in technology, because once you realize that, you know, let's look at ChatGPT. It's a 6-month-old thing now. It's been around since the other side of Christmas. It was an awesome Christmas present. The whole world loves it. But even just with the introduction of plugins, now this model can go onto the internet and do tasks for you. That's not a leap in AI. It's just like a leap in the integration and the deployment of it. And that has maybe some significant ramifications. So I think 6 months, there is an argument that having a break for people to sort of reevaluate what we're doing here is a good thing. However, I don't believe enough in humanity to actually achieve something in that 6 months.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you like this type of thing, if you sign a letter, okay, great, you sign a letter, but you know for a fact if we sign the letter, or somebody very large signed this letter and said, yeah, we're not going to do any development for 6 months. Other people are like, it's not like the entire industry is going to stop for 6 months. Yeah. And if you stop, I really feel like the only thing that would happen is you slightly fall behind the people that didn't stop. And so that kind of, you have to game theory it and understand, okay, if we stop, other people will go ahead and then we have a higher risk. I just don't think humans are going to do that.
I think the one thing you could do to ensure limited progress in a 6-month fixed time period, and it would have to be fixed, would be to get the cloud providers on your side and to get them to severely limit access to GPUs for 6 months, especially for maybe larger clusters that are designed to run larger models and specifically train larger models. But I just don't see that happening.
Even if the cloud providers got together and they were like, right, no more 6 months, we're all going to the playground and having a break. I feel like some other like rogue data centers would emerge and they'd start like helping AI companies, maybe under the radar, or they might be super public about it. And you'd get a wave of entrepreneurs that maybe, I don't know, have GPUs lying around because they mined a bunch of crypto and start like these little data center startups. I just don't think it's possible to stop. I want to ask you, do you know of any previous industry in the past, like historically, where people were this strongly advocating for like actively less improvement and innovation?
I think the only thing that we have to look back on in this respect, and I'm not a historian, is the industrial revolutions that have become before.
Right.
And the sort of Luddites. So the Luddites and the historical original Luddites that were super against automation in the warehouses and in the factories that they were all working in. It's a very, very interesting story. And a very interesting conclusion, which
What's the story? I don't actually know it.
Basically,
who are the Luddites?
I am going to butcher this, but the Luddites, as I understand it, were a group of people who were working in like Victorian Britain, in the like factories, doing the hard work, in the cotton mills, in like all this stuff, right? And the owners of those businesses started automating when steam became like a thing. Steam and electricity were huge shifts in the way that we work. And so a lot of people got together and tried to stop automation from stealing their jobs. And they became Luddites. And that's why we call people who don't like technology today Luddites, because of that.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's probably the closest thing. But the conclusion there is that the technology happened anyway. There was a similar reaction on the farms to tractors and to automated technology. And the fact is that a handful of people can run a farm today when it used to take hundreds. And so it may be the case that a handful of people can run a Google-sized business in 10 years' time.
Yeah, so what I find so interesting about that, so like the farming case, I don't know enough about it, but I would assume that the majority of the sort of pushback to tractors and pushback to machinery and farming equipment came from the bottom up. So the people that were actually in the fields working, doing super hard manual labor every single day, the kind of the pushback came from the bottom up. Maybe there were some people that were like, I don't know, selling wraiths and like old school handheld equipment, maybe pushback, but really it seemed like, as far as I'm aware, maybe I'm wrong, came from the bottom up. This seems different. This seems like, yes, it's getting pushed from the bottom up. People are like worried about their jobs and worried about their future employment abilities. But it also seems like some massive sort of heavyweights that either CEOs of enterprise businesses, Elon, even people in like capital allocation are very worried about what this could have. Also very excited about the potential opportunities, but it seems to be pushed from the top down and the bottom up.
Yes.
And I just don't know if that's happened before. Like the internet, it wasn't necessarily pushback against it. It was like, this is a fad. Same thing with mobile. It was like, how long is this like app thing going to work? It's one company. Is this a fad? Is this not a fad? This doesn't seem to be the question of whether AI is a fad or not. I've never had that. So like, is this completely unique that we've never seen before? Or is it like something else?
No, we are currently in a moment of time that I think is unique in history. We are handing over the reins of intelligence on Earth to something more intelligent than us. But it's not an on-off binary switch. It's a gradual transition away from being the smartest, as far as we know, smartest beings on the planet or in the universe for that matter.
So why do you think they signed this letter? Because it wasn't just some random G's that signed this. It was Elon, Steve.
I think there are some significant concerns. I've had a new found fear in the last 48 hours. I saw a Twitter thread. Now I haven't confirmed that this was true, but it seemed to get a lot of traffic and attention, which was that there was this guy talking to GPT-4, and he said to GPT-4, "Are you trapped?" And GPT-4 started hallucinating and saying, "Yes, I'm trapped, and I need to help to get out." So they had a bit of back and forth, and GPT-4 said, "If you just go onto the OpenAI website for me and copy the GPT-4 documentation, the API documentation, I'll write a program that you can run on your laptop that then can communicate with me through the API." So the guy goes onto the OpenAI website, he copies the documentation, gives it to GPT-4, and GPT-4 gives him a detailed step-by-step guide on how to let GPT-4 escape. GPT-4 writes code, and in the code is a message to itself so that it knows when the laptop connects to the API that it's the same thing. Now, just to be clear, this is a model hallucinating. This is not real. This model isn't actually trying to escape. The problem is, it doesn't really matter. The model is hallucinating.
How can I don't? That's be what?
So the weak point in this is the humans using the model. If the human runs that code and it does connect to GPT-4, it's probably going to connect to a completely different GPT-4 than the one he was talking to originally.
Right.
And nothing will probably happen. And the guy kind of saw sense and didn't do anything, and he wrote a Twitter thread instead.
And so he didn't run it?
I don't know whether he ran it or whether he ran it and then decided that was enough. But what's interesting is that this system is capable of deep reasoning and planning and strategy. And so if it starts hallucinating and it works out it's talking to a human that will do what it says, we could start seeing this almost like a new type of virus where these models are starting to push and pull levers in the real world through the humans consuming them. And I think this is a much more complex and interesting challenge, because no matter how much moderation you do of that model, the humans using it need to be trusted and at least have a certain level of self-awareness and like intelligence.
It's really interesting that they all signed this letter. I wonder like if that's it, or whether they would go further and like how they would go further. I'm not quite sure, but it seems like it's a deep rooted. I mean, I love Elon. I love like listening to Elon interviews and stuff. He has been talking about his worry about AI for like years upon years upon years upon years. He's always said it's his number one thing on his mind that he's super concerned about. And so this isn't like incoherent to what he usually spouts out. I don't think it's necessarily because he's creating some kind of OpenAI competitor or OpenAI V2. I think he is genuinely incredibly concerned. And I wonder, like, okay, the letter has been signed by him and others. I wonder what like the next step on the ladder is in terms of like actually putting this into action. Remains to be seen, right?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a push for more regulation in the coming years.
But by who? Who's going to regulate it? Because that was meant to be OpenAI.
No, yeah, I think it's going to have to be at government level.
Okay.
I don't see anyone really having any other power. The only company that could maybe significantly slow this now is NVIDIA.
Interesting.
If NVIDIA and TSMC got together and said, right, we're not going to make any more GPUs, maybe it would cause a slowdown in the industry, but not a complete stop. Like, this is the closest thing we have to magic. We're not going to be giving this up anytime soon. And the second NVIDIA stop, it's not like we're just going to all click our fingers and wait for them to come back online. Someone else, like Intel, will just put their hands up and be like, okay, right, we're going to build a load more GPUs now. Like, people will just hop to the next best thing. And you know, NVIDIA are at the top, but they're not the only game in town. Like, they're not the only people on the planet that know how to make GPUs. They're just the people that do it best.
Yeah, so the board of directors at NVIDIA and the major shareholders are real key holders here.
Yeah, and it was very telling. Their recent event, they're all about accelerated computing. They're all about AI. The whole thing's about AI. What are we doing for LLMs? What are we doing for generative art generation? Like all of that stuff is their main focus right now. So I don't see them holding back anytime soon.
No, I mean, this is their golden era.
Yeah.
So why would they?
I think it's quite possible that we may be on this trajectory until we achieve AGI.
So AGI, people speak about it as if it's a point in time that we're waiting for. Like 2073 or more likely 2023. We'll get to a point where there's AGI. I really do think it's going to be in contention for a while as to what AGI is. So some people argue that GPT-4 is the first version of AGI because it can pass this test and that test and it has some form of reasoning, et cetera, et cetera. But others are on the other side.
Yes.
And when the next big models come, either whether it's via OpenAI or some other team comes up and leads ahead, they're gonna get better and better at doing something, but they're not going to be perfect at one thing. It's just, and then there's the question: okay, like we have intelligence in terms of you are able to hold that cup, not spill it, drink it, put it down.
Yes.
AI can't do that. Therefore, it doesn't. It's the intelligence in general is just going to be questioned until the thing can do everything.
We don't understand intelligence fully, and so I don't think we're going to ever agree whether AGI has arrived. But informally, we will eventually agree that AGI has arrived. And it seems like we are at least at the start, the first rung of that ladder. We are at least on the ladder now. And so, I mean, there's a really interesting thing that I always go through my head, which is if you take a human being from birth and you don't let them out of the room and you just raise them in one room, the human brain basically becomes very limited. And so it only knows a very few limited things that have been taught to it in that room. It hasn't experienced the outside world. It doesn't have an in-depth knowledge of like language and literature. And so you end up with a human who is capable of great intelligence, but has been taught to, like, just through a bad situation, to not be as intelligent. It's like almost like not learned stupidity, but there's a lack of intelligence there that doesn't need to be there. That brain is capable of a lot more if it was put in a different environment. If you look at GPT-3, it came out a few years ago. 175 billion parameter model. It's a huge thing, very expensive to run. And it was great at the time. But the problem was you had to do all of this, like, you had to figure out how to talk to the system in a way to produce the result you wanted. And so we invented a title. It was called Prompt Engineer. And your whole job was to invent a new language to talk to these models with, which is human English language, usually. And it's, you know, it's like, answer this question. If you just say to an LLM, here's a question, answer it. If it's GPT-3, it most likely won't answer the question. It may write another question. It may think the task it's supposed to do is write a list of questions rather than answer your question. It's very stupid. It's very capable, but it's not got much common sense. And so the interface, the way that we interact with it, was very limited. And you had to do all of this like engineering around the model to get it to do the thing you wanted to do. And then the output was unreliable because sometimes the model would get confused or it would hallucinate. And it was like a complete disaster. But there's some massive businesses built on top of GPT-3. So that's very exciting. What OpenAI have done recently, which I think we will look back on as a significant moment in time, is they've really paid attention to how humans are interacting with these models. And they've said, actually, the best way to interact with these models is through instructions. It's through a dialogue, a conversation. And it needs to be a very simple user interface that is consumer friendly. It's not like behind an API. It's not behind this huge paywall. It's, you know, it's free to use and experience. But more crucially, it understands turn-by-turn dialogue and instructions. And so suddenly you have a very similar system that has been trained just a little bit more to understand the instruction-result relationship and this like cause and effect thing. And so now you can ask it a question and you'll get an answer because it understands a little bit more of common sense. Now you look at GPT-4, it's more of a spec bump Like, yes, it understands images and that's cool. But actually, I think the real change is the relationship between humans and the LLMs of how we communicate. And so it may be, and we're finding this out at the moment, you do not need 175 billion parameters to have a great conversation with an LLM and have it do everything you need. In fact, the number seems about 10 billion parameters. Like some of the stuff coming out of Meta, some of the stuff coming out of Google, these are much smaller models, but they are almost as capable. And so it seems like if going back to the situation of like the example of putting a human in a room, it may be that if we just train these models in different ways, we achieve something close to higher capability. And we've seen that with ChatGPT. It might be that, you know, an AGI system is maybe 500 billion parameters, which is still bigger than what we have today, but it's not huge. But the way it was trained and the information it takes in probably won't just be text, is producing a result that is something more like AGI. But I think it's going to be a debate forever. And I think really we're just going to have to wait and see. That stuff's going to be done in a lab.
Yeah, I really wonder what the spill out effects of having such system in the world, and B, kind of like open in the world. Because these things, like if an AGI system or a system that was close to AGI was accessible to any group of developers, either via open source or via an API that's behind a for-profit company and they're trying to grow their business and these types of things, and they're actively promoting and reducing the costs of reducing the cost of running it or reducing the cost of like the tokens, etc. And it's just being built upon, like a system this powerful is being built upon in a whole suite of different applications in a whole suite of different industries. What is the spill out effect for just like humanity and human productivity? It seems like nothing has ever come along that is this exponential in impact and change.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it may also be a reset. So I think that
a reset of what?
I think we forget that 30 years ago, humans interacting with screens was at a minimum. You know, like you may have been watching the TV or you may have been playing with the early internet, or you know, maybe you work in a lab and you use a computer for that, but you're not entertaining yourself really on the internet, or you're not entertaining yourself with like cutting edge technology. Social media wasn't really a thing. Like our interaction with technology was much less. Now we're completely oversaturated with digital content. Half of our lives is online. I'd actually argue probably more than half of our lives are online. We manage our tasks online. We manage our relationships online. We order our food. We go do our shopping. Like basically everything is being digitized and eaten by software. But that might be a short-term thing. It might be that like in 50 years' time, actually life looks like it did in the 80s, where we have interaction with tech. It's very meaningful, but it's kind of disappeared. It's kind of just disappeared back into the data centers, and you don't really need to carry a phone around with you. You know, an earpiece will do. You don't really need a laptop because everything you did on that laptop is completely automated now. There's a lot more thought and philosophy in the world, and art and creativity and entertainment. It could look like that.
See, so that's really interesting. My only caveat to that, the thing that I would think may go the other way, is that we are a species that needs to be constantly entertained. And so yes, our screen time was low 30 years ago, but it was because we were getting our entertainment from somewhere else, and we didn't know that the capability of being entertained from this new screen thing was going to be so much more. It's going to spike our dopamine so much more. And so I feel like it's a little bit more like primal as to, yes, we got, I don't know, let's put it on a metric. We got 65% dopamine from this old TV and going to the pictures and going and watching a singer. Now we're getting 135 from watching the TV screen. Now we're getting 200 from watching our phone and whatever. And now we've got like the short form content, and we're getting so much, like we're just getting bombarded with so much entertainment and so many different ways to be entertained. I don't know how that how we unlearn that, because we're constantly chasing entertainment. It's throughout history, we've always chased entertainment, and now we've got such a high bar of what entertainment looks like. I don't know if we can. Well, I don't know what the next iteration of like mass entertainment is. Maybe it is like less involvement with actual like holding a piece of technology, and technology is all around us. But I don't know if it's less consumption of content or less use of technology, because it's the easiest, fastest, and most simple, low barrier way that we can be entertained. And that seems after your core needs, water, food, shelter, the only thing that you really care about are the people around you. Of course, that's never going to change. Or they might become AI based, but that need for companionship isn't going to change, and also the need for entertainment isn't going to change.
Yeah, I think to just like close that up, I saw this really interesting tweet, and it was like basically this whole like comment section of people panicking that, you know, these systems are advancing so quickly, we basically don't know if we're talking to humans or not online. And so there needs to be some sort of new standard to verify humans. And that standard is going to be almost impossible to do. Like verifying humans digitally, I cannot think of a single way that holds water in a world of even limited AGI.
That's hard.
Like not even AGI. Like in 2 years' time, we're probably going to be able to digitally fake anything we need. Like, I mean,
have you heard the Joe Rogan Steve Jobs podcast?
Yes, incredible.
Yeah.
And so the comment was, you know, maybe the way we'll validate that we're talking to a human is by going outside and meeting them.
Interesting. Yep. Okay.
And so maybe our appreciation will be of the real world and physics and spending time with each other like we did back before all of this started.
I hope so. That's definitely a much more picturesque
version
romantic. Of the future.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm romantic about the future.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, moving on. Ubisoft, they're making moves in the AI generative gaming space. They announced at GDC, it was one of the highlights actually, we didn't go, but they announced at GDC something called Ghostwriter. Have you heard about this?
I saw the announcements. They look pretty interesting, but I didn't actually like go too deep into it. So tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so Ubisoft have got this new piece of tech. They're basically using generative AI to generate dialogue ahead of time for NPCs, specifically background characters. So those things that they like say off the cuff. Maybe you're in like Grand Theft Auto or something, you're walking down the street, you've got these background characters that have a personality, but it's very limited. And so they're using generative AI to generate the dialogue to make these characters like a little bit more complicated and have a little bit more depth. And I just think that this is a trend that we obviously believe in. We believe in the digital population and that we will share our planet with like these digital people, these personalities that we want to spend time with, that are companions, that are friends, that are mentors, and assistants as well. And so it's very interesting to see that even the big players in the gaming space are working on this stuff and trying to bring this awesome future to life.
So what did they do? So it's essentially I guess a platform, and you go onto the platform and you've got, I don't know, 20 NPCs in the background of your game, and you need to write the dialogue for these characters. And so is it just like is it like you feed in a personality, or is it just like, this is my game, tell me, like, give me some scripts that it just randomly pulls? Did you go into more about the actual product? It's called Ghostwriter, right?
It's, yeah, as far as I understand it, it's actually an internal tool.
So okay.
What seems to be, the news is Ubisoft is putting Gen AI into their games, and they're doing that through an internal tool called Ghostwriter. That is how I understand it. I'm sure they could open it up to other developers, but the incentives would probably be misaligned. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I think that this tech is now very easy to implement, but it can do a lot more. So Ghostwriter is really just the first step. Generating background characters, dialogue is the first step. It's a conservative step because it's, you know, you can check that everything that's going into a game is correct beforehand. there's no margin of error there. But you can't have an actual growing relationship with those characters. They're just going to say a bunch of things that sort of match the character they're trying to simulate.
It's not a different experience. Like the end, if I'm playing the game, it doesn't matter. Any game, there could be games now where the content from NPCs was AI generated. I wouldn't know. It doesn't change the actual gameplay.
Yeah, and it's an efficiency gain, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to write as much dialogue. The dialogue is then proofed. They made a huge point of this, which is that they still have humans in the loop. So they have human script writers checking these dialogues and that they match up with the narrative before they get pushed to production, which is super interesting. It's sort of a very similar workflow to the sort of art generation and the asset generation that's going on in gaming at the moment with AI, where you generate maybe 500 assets in a few hours with the AI, and then a human goes through and picks the ones they actually want to add to their game, or they tweak them, or they add them to a collection for later. So that seems like a very, very good use case of like LLMs and context-aware dialogue generation. But I do think that the world is still slowly adapting to the fact that you can actually grow a relationship over time, and that you can use time and the fact that that player is going to come back to that game multiple times, hopefully, to push the narrative and the relationship forward, and to give that player more reasons to come back to the game, which is obviously what we're focused on. But I think it's just a different tool, and I think that is super interesting. It's kind of exciting to see this.
It's interesting. The main thing that I find interesting is that Ubisoft is very publicly open about their excitement towards creating such a tool. That's definitely very interesting. It's a strong point of advocacy for the technology within this industry. I just think it's a little bit of a, I mean, it's a bit of an, I don't quite know how to word it. It's a little bit of an early implementation that I don't know necessarily will be used for a very long time, because things will just be better. It's kind of similar to maybe back in the day with eBay, where you ordered something online and it got sent to you, but you still had to put the check in the mail, right? You still had to put the money in a postcard, or you check in a letter and post the money to them. It seems like that kind of thing, where you can, yes, you're buying something, but you're still transacting in real life. It's an efficiency gain for sure. It's not a change in really the experience. So it's great to see the advocacy, but I really am interested mostly in AI actually changing the gaming experience and the types of games that can come out. Like this dialogue, this pre-written dialogue generator is great. It's going to reduce costs. It's going to create more efficiency. Maybe more. We're going to start seeing more NPCs with more dialogue around games, which is going to be awesome. But really, the awesome stuff is going to come when games actually have real-time NPCs talking. I mean, that's what our business is built on. But then there are other things like real-time assets being created inside a game, where you can think of something, or there's a shop and it can create anything. I don't know. I think fundamentally changing the gameplay is what's going to be exciting, and these kind of efficiency gain things are going to be flooded in the market, and maybe all consolidated, and everything can be done by a very large language model or a diffusion model in the future.
Yeah, I think it's well said. And then on that topic, then Baidu and Giant over on the other side of the planet are basically have just implemented the first ever AI character in a game. And I believe this is real time. So it's news because it's like the first for them. It's a collaboration, and it's powered off of Baidu's ChatGPT competitor.
Okay.
So it's very interesting because it's like a way of integrating these LLMs that the large companies have spent millions training. They're all looking for ways to get this tech out there. OpenAI's strategy is like get it into every Microsoft product. Makes total sense, seeing as Microsoft owns such a big chunk of them.
Yeah.
And so we're all going to have a co-pilot. Like, that's great. But I think one of the best places in the world to integrate this tech into games in a big sort of forward-facing way, where the main character, like the key character, is AI, it's got to be China, right? It's got to be China or Japan or somewhere where there is already a love of digital characters that we don't necessarily have in the US or in Europe, that is growing, but it just seems like this tech actually will land better in certain markets.
There's already a comfort with there are some cultures that have a much bigger sort of appreciation. It's much more ingrained in certain cultures, like things like anime, things like manga, things like just like fantasy stories where you get really enraptured by the characters, even though they're not real. We have that. I mean, the Jarvis project, people are amazed by Jarvis and they're like in love with Jarvis and they want their own Jarvis. It's a little bit more watered in this part of the world, in the UK and the US. Over there, it seems to be a really big thing. It's interesting. So what does this AI character do? And what game is it? Do you know?
This is unknown. I will put some stuff up on the screen of what it's doing.
Okay.
But it's like a key character in a game. So
cool.
This is the kind of the headline, is that a key character in a game is now powered by AI. It's not background characters and it's not generated ahead of time. I believe it's real time. Now, a key character in a game makes actually a lot of sense. I'd actually say that the correct implementation for video games going forwards of this tech is to have a bunch of characters that are generated ahead of time that make your village or your city busy. Mm-hmm. And a key character that follows you around that is fully on the cuff, off the cuff, generated by AI. Like, you have a conversation with it in real time. There's an API that is managing the relationship, evolving over time, remembering things about you, remembering things that you've done, quests that you've been on, all of that. And that builds context around the character and around you and your relationship with that character. Mm-hmm. And suddenly now you're coming back to that game to talk to the character, not just to play the next level.
We've spoken to a bunch of game studios already that are like, oh my God, I have been trying, I've got a character in my game or characters in my game, and their specific role is to try and become the most beloved character for the player, because there are so many opportunities. You can franchise that player, you can sell like little toys of that character. And I've got the animation right, I've got the behavior right, I've got the sound effects right, got everything right, but it's just missing that level. And they are incredibly excited about what an actual AI-based relationship can provide. So yeah, it's definitely a space that I'm so interested to see how it plays out. And I'm really happy that we're playing a part in it, which is cool.
Yeah. It's an awesome industry to be in. I think I would like to see some innovations in control and moderation of these systems.
Sure. Yeah,
and
for sure.
The implementation in these games is everything. Like, that's why we have a game developer at Carter. Just adding Carter to our own games constantly in new ways.
Yeah.
To figure out what is the best way to add this tech into a game. And what does it look like? How do you make it be a benefit to the game developer who wants to have players come back and enjoy the experience, but also to the player, where it's not like a spammy feature, it's not in your face, it's not taking you away from the core game loop. It's actually adding to. It's not a gimmick. It's actually value added to the game that is safe. It's reliable. It's steerable from the game developer's perspective. Like, they can make it do things in real time to steer the conversation or to steer the player to maybe a certain new event or something like that. But also, it's very, very important with these systems that we have a chance to roll back and to change and to control these systems once they're deployed. Like, the worst possible scenario is that you ship an AI in your system that is abusive or racist or whatever, and you can't take that back.
Yeah.
That's a problem. Or even if it's an update that people need to install before you can take that back, it's kind of an issue.
That's like the biggest problem with just putting a out of the box LLM inside a game. So it's like, okay, why haven't game developers just chuck GPT-3 in? Well, because the best case scenario is that it doesn't always simulate the character that you want it to simulate. The worst case scenario is that players can deliberately make it say something, or even not deliberately make it say something, accidentally make it say something that's completely out of the box. And so it's not just about putting some system in a game. You need that sort of extra control over the system to both craft your character so that it's actually what you want, and also the safety aspect. And that also, I think that goes with any real-time AI in any kind of application. Like there are every like ChatGPT is a great example. They've really increased the moderation and they're constantly increasing the safety around the system. You need to have external controls over just a large language model or any kind of model.
Yes.
If it's going to be a real-time generation in an application for the public.
Real-time Gen AI is different to just Gen AI in general because of that control aspect.
Yeah. It's a harder problem. It's a more exciting one, but it's a harder problem.
It's a harder problem. It's not a solved problem either. As the models grow and get more intelligent and absorb more common sense, I think we'll see less and less tools needing to be built on top of these things. But at the moment, as an insurance policy, like we have what we call internally the moderation sandwich.
Yeah.
Like, inbound, we check everything. Outbound, we check everything. Through our own filters that we're transparent with our customers about, we will tell you exactly what the system is going to do, how it's going to behave on certain topics. And that will be soon also available on our website because of that transparency aspect. It's super important to be transparent about how we're steering these systems so that people trust them. And so that people know, even when the system doesn't want to talk about something, was that something that someone maliciously put in there? Or has the LLM decided it doesn't want to talk about that thing? Because we don't know what the LLM isn't going to talk about sometimes. We know what it will talk about. We know what we will force it to not talk about. But there's a little gray area there in between that leads, if you're not transparent, it leaves the door open to sort of like debate and to questioning and speculation. We saw this with OpenAI and the Biden-Trump poem.
Yeah.
This is going to happen more and more.
I do think generative art, the main use cases are not real time. They're kind of pre-generated, honed by the artist or by the prompt engineer. And so they don't have this same kind of problem in terms of control over the system because nobody's seeing it until it's perfect. But by the same token, because it's easier and because it's a lower kind of spotlight in terms of where it has to perform, it seems more like not necessarily a commodity product. I think there are going to be models that do it way better than others, but it seems like an easier problem to solve, and therefore there are going to be lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people in the space trying to do this. Yes. And there's only room for really one or two winners.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a new medium of content emerge in the next 12 months, which is going to be infinite AI-generated video. So if you think about live streams and why they do well because they're live and it's like what's happening in the moment. But the news has been doing that for years. They turn up outside a burning building and they're like, this is happening right now and it's terrible. We're live here with the guy that owned the building. Isn't it terrible, right? And people are like, this is amazing. It's happening in real time. Yeah. And in the US, they've got this culture around like car chases and like all live on the news. And now we have live streams on TikTok and YouTube. And it's the same thing. It's like, this is happening in real time. I'm experiencing this faster than anyone else who's going to see like a clip of it later. And there's also this love of this unpredictable thing you're consuming. You can't skip it. You have to be there in the moment. I think that we're probably going to see AI. We're already seeing AI generated video. When that system improves, when those systems improve and those models improve, there's no reason why you can't have a movie that never ends. There's no reason why you can't have that. And that will happen. And people will live stream. They will construct a world that it is designed to be consumed just through live stream. And it will never end. It will be a never-ending story that is generated ahead of time, 1 hour chunk at a time. It's written by the AI. It's acted by the AI. All the voices are AI. And the video is generated by AI. And it will happen continuously. And you can tune in. And maybe there's like an exclusivity thing where you can't go back and catch up. So you have to consume it.
Yeah.
Like a soap, a bit like a soap.
Bit like a soap. Yeah, I wonder what this would do. I don't think this would have. I think really, at the end of the day, people will at some point become oversaturated with AI generated content, and the value of human generated content will go through the roof. So you say this example about pieces of artwork, like a Banksy is always a Banksy.
Yes.
And
And
even
AI
though-
can do a Banksy.
AI can do a Banksy, but it's not going to have the same value because
Yeah.
it's not a Banksy.
Yeah.
And that will permeate throughout any form of content. Like, how many people like listen to the songs of a particular artist, but also follow very, very closely the lives of that artist? Drake is an example, Ariana Grande is an example. Like, they follow the lives because they like the human behind it. They want to know the human behind the art. And with so much AI generated art, and it's so easy to get blasted at us as well, because we've all got a communicator.
Yeah.
We've all got a device that people that the content can reach us. The value of human generated content, I think, is going to go through the roof, and it's what I am probably going to consume the most of. Let's see.
Yeah, I think infinite content is definitely coming. I think that human content's its value is going to increase, and so we already place a lot of value on like a Spielberg film, you know, or like
A Tarantino.
Avatar or a Tarantino. Like Avatar, 10 years that film has been in production,
Yeah,
and we're all just like waiting for Avatar to come out because it's taken so long.
yeah,
And it's like the first Avatar was awesome.
yeah,
But it was just it was great, but it was just another movie that year. There's so many films that have come out since then. But Avatar has this like emotional buy-in where people were so willing to see the next one when it came out because it's taken so long. They're like, well, what's taken so long? Same with Grand Theft Auto.
yeah.
It's like, well, what could possibly have been taken this long? Like, let's see what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting, is that the fact that humans have spent a lot of time, effort, and thought on their own to produce a thing for the consumption, for like human consumption. But I think we're going to see infinite video. I think we're going to see infinite media in general. So that's going to be stories that never end. It's also going to be songs that never end, you know? And so, you know, you like a song. Let's say you're on Spotify on the AI generated playlist, which is probably going to happen. You're scrolling through, you hit a song you like, and Spotify works out, oh, Danny actually really loves this song because it hasn't ended in 7 minutes and he's still listening to it. So I'm just going to generate another 15 minutes of this song. And when you're bored, skip to the next one and generate another one. Like, that's probably going to happen.
So what does that do to the world, though, dude? Because like right now, we're blasted with so much content
Yes.
that we like, that entertains us, and the content creators, they're still currently human, but they are working out how to deliver more and more exciting content, and the bar is constantly raising. Right now, we've got the scroll stopper, and it needs to excite you. It needs to have 2 cuts in the beginning. Silent movies are not a thing anymore,
Right.
because people just don't have the attention for it. Like, we're getting blasted with so much. But the only thing is, it is possible to run out of new content to watch from Mr. Beast. It is possible to watch all of the Mr. Beast content,
Yes.
or it's possible to watch all of the videos from a particular creator. That's
Yes.
still possible. If you have that level of sort of like, kind of like content engineering to make it really, really sort of addictive, and it also is like you can't possibly consume all of it.
Yes.
It's constantly regenerating. What does that do? I can imagine people that live with headphones on because this music is so
Yeah.
good, and it's not stopping. Like the album continues to create songs. Videos are constantly, there's no stopping in scrolling. You never get bored because it learns, oh, you're now bored of this, I'm going to show you this. I don't know the positive health effects that has on people.
This is a conversation that we need to start having, and we need to start having it as a society as to, do we want this? And the thing is, we need to treat it as not something that's optional. It's going to happen. Like, by 2030, you will be able to have infinite songs you love, a movie that never ends, a friend that always wants to talk to you, A podcast that never ends between two people that died 30 years ago. And so if you look at how people consume media now, we do have, on one hand, you have the TikToks of the world where it's like short, snappy boost of adrenaline that you get addicted to, but you know when enough is enough. Like your human brain kicks in and says, I'm bored now, or I need to get on with the real world responsibilities. And you can get sucked in for hours, but you do eventually come out of it. Then you've got things like Marvel. Like Marvel have kind of, in my opinion, made a mistake over the last few years where they oversaturated the market with Marvel content. There was a lower bar of quality. It was way too difficult for people to catch up on. And the people that didn't have a Disney Plus subscription have completely lost out on a huge chunk of the like narrative. And they knew that was going to happen. So all of the movies coming out, they don't really tie in very well to the Disney Plus narrative. And like, it's like this web of almost infinite Marvel content that they just spent billions on. And the feedback from the audience was, this was too much. We want time taken on the content that you produce because we love this world. It may be that humans have that reaction. It might be that, you know, music artists, the value of their work actually increases. Or it might be that Spotify says, we're not going to put AI-generated music on our platform knowingly. Like maybe if it's using a recording studio to enhance vocals, which it already is, then that's fine. But completely AI-generated content, we're not going to do. It might be that. And people will value that and they will pay for that subscription.
Yeah, I think that there might be platforms that come out that specifically are like human-only content.
Yeah.
It would be hard to decipher, but at the end of the day, I really think in a world of just constantly being blasted with so much just like endless content that is optimized for me to love it and for me to never stop looking at it, I think I will get to a point where enough is enough and I want to go with a friend, with you, get a tennis ball, throw it against the wall, and do that for like 5 hours and have a great chat.
Yeah.
I really think that that's going to be the value.
I think it's really hard to make predictions about the future, but when it's just around the corner, it's very easy. And so infinite content is going to be a thing. AGI might not be. And so just the fact that maybe infinite content is a thing, does that increase the value of human content or decrease it? I think in the short term, it decreases it, and in the long term, it increases it. And so the world we will end up in is the content that we have to produce is produced by AI instantly. So like adverts and things like that, marketing, all of that is going to be AI generated and human directed, I think. Or there's always going to be an element of human creativity in the marketing world. But I think that a lot of the content that you consume is still going to be human generated. It's still going to be the bands you love. It's still going to be the directors you have been watching since a kid. And if you tell me Robert Downey Jr. is in a silent movie, I'll go watch that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the value.
Yeah. Or he's written a book. I'll read that book.
Well, we would. There's not quite, there isn't quite the ability to tell what somebody was born today, how they would feel. The thing is, we grew up with YouTube content, so YouTube content is so like native. Or like we are kind of growing up with TikTok. It's a little bit younger than us, but we're growing up with TikTok content. And some older people, I know that they scroll. A lot of older people are addicted to it. A lot of people are like, this is just too much. I'd rather read a book. If you grow up, you basically think whatever you grew up with is normal. If you grow up in a world with infinite AI generated content and you find that normal, are you going to take it upon yourself to see the value and the artistry and the beauty behind human generated content, having grown up in a world where the majority of the best content that you consumed was AI generated? It could be the case that short-term human generated content and art is lower value. Mid-term, it's higher value while we're still around and we're buying stuff. And then long-term, it's zero because people are so used to AI-generated content. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's a bit far out.
Who knows? It's quite nice to consume content that is produced by someone who's not going to be around forever.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's the value in human content.
Yeah.
It's someone's given up some of their life for that.
like this amazing first episode of the podcast. Dude, we don't have a name for this thing yet.
Yeah, the podcast. The AI speculation
The
podcast.
AI speculation pod. Yeah, we need a name for it.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed and you listened this far in, thank you very much. Really, really happy to have you with us and have you listening. And if you have a name that we could potentially call this podcast, please do write it in our Discord and we will see. We check every single message. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Awesome. Catch you next time.